Guys, just before we start this video, I just want to make the announcement that tonight we are streaming the Hobbit video game that came out for the GameCube back in 2003. You know, the one before those shitty Hobbit movies came out. We will be starting at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we will go as long as I can stay awake. Come on in and have fun as we usher in the new year of 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Metropolis Radio, and today we are going to be focusing on The Matrix Resurrections because everyone else seems to be doing that. It's become the internet's favorite punching bag, and I decided to finally check the movie out for myself, and yeah, it's one of those things. I'm just going to say right off the bat, I did not enjoy The Matrix Resurrections at all, and never, ever did I imagine a world where The Matrix Revolutions would no longer be the worst Matrix movie ever made. But then I just came across this article from The Hollywood Reporter here, apparently written back on Christmas Eve. Again, didn't watch The Matrix Resurrections until just a couple days ago, and that is titled The Matrix Resurrections Encourages Audience Division. So if you're gonna have a headline right here, had I seen this headline on Christmas Eve, personally, I would not have wasted my time with The Matrix Resurrections. And for those of you guys that have never seen the movie, that have not yet seen the movie, believe me, you want this movie fucking spoiled. So let's dig into this spoiler-filled article and potentially save you from watching The Matrix Resurrections. Crap. Here we go. Quote, after all these years to be going back to where it all started, back to the Matrix. But the reality is, if there is such a straightforward term within this world, you can't go back, only forward. Lana Wachowski's sequel, The Matrix Resurrections, which follows the events established by her and her sisters Lily's genre-defining Matrix trilogy, revives the franchise after nearly 20 years. Did it really revive the franchise, though? Because, as I brought up, The Matrix Resurrections is now the internet's favorite punching bag. But like so much of Lana Wachowski's career, this revival is not one that follows the expected trajectory of a quote-unquote legacy sequel, even as the film plays around with nostalgia by very deliberately inserting footage from the original trilogy within its narrative. And this is one of the biggest problems with The Matrix Resurrections, is it relies far too much on nostalgia. You know, and they do bring it up, you know, by very deliberately inserting footage from the original trilogy within its narrative. And not just by deliberately inserting footage, they recreated the first scene from the first movie when the cops storm in and bust Trinity, but they don't exactly recreate it. You know, instead of having a bunch of, you know, regular beat cops, it's military guys with submachine guns. They can't even be bothered to do that spinning camera trick where Trinity is up in the air, and you see the camera spin around and then Trinity kick the cop in the chin. You know, so if you're gonna go so far as to recreate one of the more iconic scenes, but then you're gonna cheap out, you know, you're gonna completely cheap out, then don't bother. 1999's film asks, what is The Matrix? And 2021's The Matrix Resurrections pushes that concept further by asking, what is it about The Matrix that made you like it in the first place? Probably why this movie didn't go over very well. See, it was so focused on being so self-referential that it forgot to be a good movie. Wachowski welcomes division within her latest film. That's something you should never welcome. You know, if you're openly saying, yeah, this movie is going to divide people, then don't make it to begin with. Something she's no stranger to by sequentially removing many of the elements that fans associate with The Matrix in order to reveal what has always been underneath the surface, the source of the franchise, a love story between two humans making the choice to build a better world together. What about all of the philosophical elements to the initial trilogy? Those just don't exist apparently. It's just a love story. The love story is part of it, but not the complete picture. The Matrix Resurrections welcomes back familiar faces. Neo, played by Keanu Reeves, Trinity, Carrie Ann Moss, Niobe, Jada Pinkett Smith. Yes, they do bring back Niobe from The Matrix Reloaded. Familiar characters with new faces. Sati, I'm not even gonna try to pronounce her name. I think she was the little girl from Matrix Revolutions, the one that was always with the Oracle. Agent Smith, played by Jonathan Groff. Why? Morpheus, I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name. I think it's a Yaha Abdul Mateen II. Again, why are you going to recast Agent Smith in Morpheus? If you're not going to bring back, Hugo Weaving and Lawrence Fishburne respectively as either Agent Smith or Morpheus, then don't bother bringing them back. And new characters, Bugs, played by Jessica Henwick. The funny part is that about halfway through the movie, the script actually forgets about the fact that she even exists. Sequoia, played by Toby, I'm not even gonna try to pronounce his last name. I don't even remember Sequoia, and I just saw the movie a couple days ago. And the Analyst, played by Neil Patrick Harris. Instead of the architect, it's now the Analyst. And he's actually another character where about halfway through the movie, the script actually forgets about the fact that he even exists. As it navigates a Hollywood film culture dominated by sequels, remakes, reboots, recastings, and legacy characters, The Matrix Resurrections will undoubtedly mean many things to many people, at least those savvy and invested enough to engage with it beyond the level of superficial. So right here, right off the bat, you know what they're basically saying in plain English? You just didn't understand it, man. Why the movie is so divisive. You get those shitniks that are just, you just don't get it, brah. You see, I'm at a much higher level of understanding. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent for far too long. And it's cleverly set up by the film's meta narrative. Yes, the movie does legitimately try to be meta, in which the Matrix trilogy is a video game created by Thomas Anderson, Keanu Reeves, within the Matrix. None of these engagements are wrong. Yes, that's what this movie actually tries to accomplish. It tries to be so meta and so self-referential that it actually hurts it. But there are, the film suggests, levels of anti-engagement that hinge more so on what the film is doing aesthetically and literally than what it is doing emotionally. All these years later, some audiences are still trying to bend the spoon instead of accepting that there is no spoon. See guys, I can reference the first Matrix movie here. When we meet up with Thomas Anderson, his past life as Neo relegated to dreams that he turned into a best-selling video game, he is deeply unhappy. He's chasing a new creative endeavor, a game called Binary. But Anderson was meant for more than the constraints of a binary world. And just as Neo in his game is semi-autobiographical, sorry, I did mispronounce that. It feels the same in terms of Anderson serving as a semi-autobiographical avatar for Lana Wachowski, who has also rejected the idea of binaries in her personal life as a trans artist. Again, we're going to be so focused on being so self-referential, so meta, that we're gonna forget to make a good movie in the process. Even though Anderson is stuck in his routine, the non-negotiable assignment from his boss, Smith, to create The Matrix 4 comes as something of a hostage situation. If Anderson doesn't do it, Smith assures him that their parent company, Warner Brothers, and yes, this is legitimately in the movie, they're not making this up, will simply make it with someone else. Obviously, the subtext is the text here, and those who have followed along with the production history of The Matrix 4 know that the sequel, once prequel, was going to be written and directed without the Wachowskis' involvement should the filmmakers have decided not to return. Thus, Anderson, much like Wachowski, is given the choice to see their deeply personal magnum opus handed off to someone else, or to figure out a way back into it. It's a choice, which, as Morpheus says later, that is an illusion because it's reality, no choice at all. And I'm going to revisit this by the end. Anderson has no choice but to return to the Matrix, just as he has no choice to take the red pill and be awakened to the quote-unquote desert of the real once more, with Bugs as his white rabbit leading him down the rabbit hole. and Morpheus, this time a program created by Anderson within his video game, and giving sentience by bugs, serving as his guide. Yes, for those that don't know, Lawrence Fishburne's Morpheus, they killed him off in real life. So now the Morpheus in here is just a computer program, and conveniently not played by Lawrence Fishburne. How they get around it is because Thomas Anderson created Morpheus as a hybrid of both Agent Smith and Morpheus to basically justify the recasting. With this new iteration of Morpheus in particular, Wachowski pokes fun at the way in which reboots and sequels seek to eliminate familiar lines of dialogue by going for a Cliff Notes version in order to achieve audience recognizability. All the variations on with great power, there must also come great responsibility. I think that was first in the Spider-Man comics before it was in the movie. But, one of the most famous lines from, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man there, immediately springs to mind. Instead of Lawrence Fishburne gravitas and intrigue, we get Yahya Abdul-Mateen's II's blah blah blah, which pokes fun at the audience's expectation to see the same scene again, and the fact that so much of that red pill or blue pill speech from the original film has been co-opted by right-wingers. Oh boy. And those who don't have the faintest understanding of what the scene means in the context of the larger story. Yet the funny part is the Wachowskis will never admit this. The writers will never admit this, but the Wachowskis themselves stole the concept of the red pill versus blue pill philosophy. So don't pretend that the Matrix is the one that started. The Matrix is the one that made it popular, but they're not the ones that that really kickstarted. Plus, why did you have to recreate the first Matrix movie to begin with? Again, it's if you want to bring in nostalgia, but then immediately subvert expectations on nostalgia, then don't rely so much on nostalgia. By the way of the internet and the way in which art is commodified into political agendas and memes, those words that once carried such weight have just become noise. Blah blah blah. Hold on. I'm gonna scroll back real quick because I believe where was it? Oh, here we go. Let's reread this section right here. Referring to Thomas Anderson, he's chasing a new creative endeavor, a game called Binary. But Anderson was meant for more than the constraints of a binary world. And just as Neo in his game is semi-autobiographical, it feels the same in terms of Anderson serving as a semi-autobiographical avatar of Lana Wachowski, who has also rejected the ideas of binaries in her personal life as a trans artist. So you're gonna cry, bitch, and moan that quote-unquote right-wingers have stolen the red pill, blue pill philosophy, and how, art is commodified and turned into political agendas, yet you just turned the Matrix Resurrections into a political agenda. You know what we call that? We call that a fucking contradiction. Oh, let's just continue on. There's a lot of earned ribbing of the audience when it comes to their expectations for the Matrix sequels, especially when looking at the discourse that still surrounds Matrix Reloaded and Matrix Revolutions, by those who simply wanted more of what they got in the first film. Many of the staff on Anderson's development team, particularly his co-worker Jude, Andrew Lewis Caldwell, I didn't even pick up the guy's name, it wasn't important, are representative of the kind of fans who reject the deeper considerations of the Matrix sequels and primarily cared about kung fu, cool gunplay, and the first and easiest layer of these films, war between humans and machines that can only be ended by the free will, or is it destiny, of a Christ-like chosen one. That aspect Jude and the development team insist is what players/audience want from a new Matrix entry. Instead, what Wachowski's give us is something entirely different. Yes, it removed a lot of the mythological aspects of that initial trilogy. That probably did not help. Neo still knows kung fu, but he doesn't pick up a gun throughout the whole movie. Perhaps a response to the Matrix being blamed for school shootings while the lack of love... Okay, I'm not going to go into that. The offensive powers Neo displays in the previous films are largely defensive, a kind of force shield, for a lack of better term, that prioritizes protection over destruction. Yeah, you know that scene when he just blocks bullets? That's pretty much all he does in this movie. They just don't want to go into that. They want to go into like the deeper and political messaging while simultaneously, swearing off one side of it for turning the Matrix into a political message. The goal of the film and of the characters, both human and machine, isn't to destroy the Matrix or the machines, but to change humanity's relationship to them. In the 60 years that have passed in the real world between the events of revolutions and resurrections, some humans and some machines have come together and learned to coexist, attaining what the machines tried to achieve during the period known as the Second Renaissance, as showcased in the Animatrix that came out in '03. They are stronger together and evidenced by the city Io. Yeah, instead of Zion, they now say Io. It's now the city of Io, so they dropped the Z and the N from Zion to create Io. Built from the remains on Zion in both physical structure and alphabet, not only does Io reflect the ones and zeros that make up code, but it is also a reversal of 01. The first machine city that led humans to set off their nuclear weapons. Io suggests that humans and machines have the capability to be harmonious and express individualism. The point of harmony is underscored by Resurrection's central element, the love story between Neo and Trinity, which ultimately forces the audience to reconsider the mythology surrounding the One. Why did you avoid the mythology to begin with? You know, that probably is not going to help. And I've said this before, with franchise films, you don't want to fuck with them too much. You know, audience expectation for a franchise film is a good thing. You can do what you want in a franchise film to a degree, but there are still aspects that you need to include to make it a Matrix movie. Following the Matrix Revolutions, Neo and Trinity's bodies were kept in Machine City and reconstructed once it was discovered that together they formed a powerful source of energy. Yes, that is actually in the movie. Their charge represented the quality that guides all human life, the hope of holding on to what you have and achieve more, the fear of losing it, positive and negative, 1 and 0, I and 0 again. That hope and fear was the defining factor of every choice Neo and Trinity made in the Matrix trilogy, which, given human nature, was really no choice at all. Just as humans cannot thrive without the benefits of machines, Neo cannot thrive without Trinity, and his powers are limited without her presence. Thus, once awakened back in the real world, Neo can only save himself by saving Trinity, who is trapped in the Matrix as a wife and mother of two named Tiffany, which is an earnest approach to love we don't see often enough in contemporary blockbusters. It's the transcendental power. It's the transcendental power of love that makes Neo who he is, and his powers within the Matrix are guided by feelings rather than fact. The final act, both the rescue of Trinity in the real world and Thomas and Tiffany's motorcycle chase from the Analyst swarm bots, are based around escape, which plays out so differently from the Matrix's final act of confrontation that it is jarring, intentionally so. The big fight here is not Neo versus Smith, but Neo and Trinity's fight to reunite, and in the end, it's not a belief in the one that saves them, but a belief in the two of them, a binary relationship formed out of escaping the parameters of a binary world. When Neo and Trinity jump off the building escaping the bots, Trinity flies and catches Neo. With this act, we realize that Neo was never the one alone. He was because of Trinity, who becomes fully aware of her own powers within the Matrix by the end of this film. The original film ended with Neo flying off a superhero within the world of the Matrix, with the course set for battle of good against evil, right before superhero films would become our most popular means of entertainment. In the end of the Matrix Resurrections, Neo and Trinity take control of the Matrix from the Analyst and set out to remake it. What that means for the minds inside of it, those they're willing and those held captive, remains to be seen, hopefully in further installments. There's probably not going to be any further installments knowing how badly this fucking flopped. Neo and Trinity don't settle for being something as common as superheroes in a battle against good and evil. They set out to remake the world as digital gods, which in turn is the freedom Lana Wachowski has rediscovered with this very film. The choice to rebuild this franchise in her own image, and whether we come along willingly or are simply captive to our desires for sequels and content, there's the promise that whatever is built will be unlike anything we've experienced before. But I just brought up this fact that in a franchise film, audience expectations are a good thing. You can do what you want to a degree, but when you actually break down the Matrix Resurrections, it's basically just a generic sci-fi film trying to be a Matrix movie. See, when you subvert all the mythology of it, what you're left with in reality is just generic sci-fi action movie. And I'm gonna say one last thing before I end this off. If you as a filmmaker cannot make a proper comeback, then don't even attempt to come back at all. You know, if your whole goal is to subvert expectations within your own franchise, and what you get out on the other side is nothing special because you subverted all the mythology. You basically turned what was once a decent franchise that had a lot of Eastern and Western philosophies in it into generic sci-fi action movie. Then there was no point in making The Matrix Resurrections. And by the way, guys, everything that was said in this article that was deemed as spoilers basically is what happened in the movie. You absolutely needed this movie spoiled for you, because when you really break it down, The Matrix Resurrections is only being compared to The Last Jedi because it's so divisive, but also when you look at it, there really isn't anything special to it. And guys, that's pretty much all I got for you. If you stuck around this long, thanks so much for doing so. And if you've been following me long enough, you know I'm terrible at ending these videos, so I will just see you guys on next time.